welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and welcome to the second week of Vlogmas. It doesn't feel very Christmassy because I'm sitting outside to film, but it does feel Christmassy because this week I am working on my Christmas cards, so I'll try to give you a sneak peek of that. I did finally have time to work on them. And then also I have a few more batches of Christmas cookies to make, so all the Christmassy things. But I wanted to come on here and update you on what I am reading. So it is Monday, so I didn't film for a couple of days in between the ending of my last vlog and the beginning of this one. The sheep and the dogs are loud outside here today. Oh well, and you get a dead rose bush. It's all the wonderful things in a vlog. So since I have last been on here, I have gotten probably, maybe it's like 2/3 of the way. It's definitely over halfway through the Autobiography of Santa Claus, and I'm still listening to it on audio, and I'm liking it less as I continue. Not that it's bad, but I said in my last vlog that I just don't have the nostalgia attachment to Santa that a lot of people do, and I think that that really impacts my enjoyment of the story. But it also just kind of gets really ridiculous which, I mean, I know that the story of Santa Claus is a very magical one. There's lots of stuff in it that is just very magical, but there's just some things about it. They're like, he keeps gaining these companions as we go, and they're either like mythically historical characters, or they're historical characters who don't maybe have as definitive of an ending in history. And it's getting really almost weird with the people that he's accumulating, along with kind of this discussion of how when he was a bishop, the people believed these magical things of him and then turned him into a saint, wanting him to perform these miraculous things that he said he'd never performed. And he comes into contact with some other people, notably Francis of Assisi, who says the same thing, that people believe that he can do these things and he can't do these things because they're just impossible. But yet there's all this emphasis on magic. And so I'm like, why would you not believe in miracles? Why are miracles implausible and impossible, but the magic that's happening is totally legitimate? That's just like a little nitpicky thing for me. It's not like a horrible part of the story or anything like that, but I'm just kind of like confused about that mindset, I guess. I also did finish The Memory Keeper's Daughter, which I talked about in my last vlog. I kind of told you what it was about a little bit. The writing of this continued to be beautiful the whole way through, and it's a very difficult story because, as I mentioned last time, this is about a man who, for certain reasons, ends up having to deliver his twins. He actually doesn't realize that his wife is having twins, and the boy is delivered, it's fine and healthy. The little girl has Down syndrome, and so because of the medical associations and issues with Down syndrome, he believes that that will only cause further pain to his wife for her to have to undergo all those things. So he hands the baby to the nurse that's helping him deliver these babies and says, bring her to this address, and it's a home for children with Down syndrome. And he's like, just leave her there. And she can't do that. So she ends up moving to another city and raising this little girl as her own baby. And so we follow the mother who carried these babies, the doctor husband who delivered them, the son, the twin that is the surviving twin, because he tells his wife that this baby died at birth, the little girl with Down syndrome. And then we follow the nurse as she is raising these babies. So we have all these different perspectives, and we see all of the harm that keeping this secret caused by people who don't even have any idea. Like, his wife and his son have no idea that there was not a second baby who died. That is something that they don't know. And so the secrets that he keeps causes him to put up this wall, and we kind of see his backstory and his childhood and things that happened that helped him to make the decision that he did, that he regretted. And why he did the things that he did, and how it was even a common practice in medical practices at the time to just automatically send these babies and children with Down syndrome to a home because that was believed to be what was best for them. And so you're seeing all these people who are not particularly likable. You're seeing the secret just destroy this family, and the wife makes some decisions that are kind of pushed back because of what the husband did. So it's pushed back on him, but she is totally responsible for her own decisions in my mind. So it's not his fault that she made the decisions that she did. Did the decisions he make and the distance it caused kind of create the perfect storm for her to be more willing to make those decisions? Yes, but she's still a human capable of making her own decisions. And so I felt like pretty much all the blame was put on the husbands. And I don't know. I think that the nurse who raised this little girl is like the best character in the story. She advocates for this little girl to be able to get an education at a public school, and she advocates for her and advocates for her and just thinks that there's so much more to her and for her than society has deemed. And I just think that that's so admirable, and I loved that so much. I loved her character. I think she was the best character in this whole story, and I just loved her. So overall, I really liked this. The writing continued to be just gorgeous throughout. Here's another example, kind of more towards the end of the book with no spoilers. He had come to this town as a stranger, but now the streets flashing by were so familiar. Not a step or an image remained unconnected to a memory. He had seen these trees planted, watched them grow. He passed houses he knew, houses where he had been for dinner or for drinks, where he'd gone on emergency calls, standing late in the night in hallways or foyers, writing out prescriptions, calling an ambulance. Layer on layer of images and days, dense and complex and particular to him alone. His wife could walk here, or his son, and see something quite different, but just as real. I just loved that. So overall, I enjoyed this. Writing is beautiful. The subject's really heavy. You have a lot of hurting people making difficult and at times downright infuriating decisions, but I still really am glad that I read it. I'm still working my way through The Hobbit as well, but I'm starting 2 new books today. One of those is Jo's Boys by Louisa May Alcott. I'm reading this with a subscriber friend, Alyssa, and I'm so excited to read this with her. I read Little Women with her 2 years ago around the holidays, and then last year we read Little Men. So we're going to be wrapping this up, and I am so delighted to read more Louisa May Alcott, and I super love this beautiful antique edition. Then with another subscriber friend, Penny, I'm reading The Razor's Edge by W. Somerset Maugham. I don't know anything about this. I started reading it. As you can see, there's no detail or anything. I picked this up at a Goodwill for like $1, and it's signed. And you can see the outline of my phone on the pages. I think that the opening sentence of this book is great, because it just says, I have never begun a novel with more misgiving. If I call it a novel, it is only because I don't know what else to call it. And I'm like, so intrigued. I don't know anything about him. I just know that some of his books are on like those recommended lists of books that you need to read, of classics that are so important to read. And so when I found this at a thrift store, I picked it up, but I haven't had any kind of push to pick it up, even though it's on my Read or Read project. So now I have the push, and I'm reading it with Penny, which I'm really excited about. Those are my plans for this week. So I will definitely keep you in the loop with progress that I make. I don't know if I'll finish anything this week. Might finish the Autobiography of Santa Claus this week, and maybe I'll finish Razor's Edge this week. I don't know. We'll just kind of see how the week goes. So I just had to share with you, this is not a reading update. I got this in the mail from Charlene, and I'm so excited, and I just have to share it with you. So she sent me these literary teas. So this one is Dickens, and it even says on the side that this is a hearty, well-rounded variation on the typical British tea of Dickens' time. And it's a blend of Chinese and Indian tea that has a light currant aftertaste. So it has black tea, oolong tea, black currant flavoring, and cornflower petals. It smells so good. But this one right here also is Dostoevsky tea. And so it's Russian tea, and it has some Indian tea and some other things that were kind of the more common tea to be drinking in Russia at the time. And they smell so good. I wish that smell-o-vision was a thing, that you could smell these, because they smell so good. And there's such a thoughtful, amazing gift. And then she sent a little tea ball, because it's loose leaf tea, with a cat reading a book. It's so cute. So the really fun part about this Dickens tea is it actually says on the side, the adventures of Pip and Oliver go wonderfully with this tea. And my daughter and I are reading Oliver Twist in school right now. Yeah. So I am going to make some of this tea and drink it while we read Oliver Twist. Hello from me and Giselle, the queen. I have another literary gift to share with you that Dia from Novel Idea sent me, and this is the funniest thing. So she sent me this soap and this lotion, which, as you can see, says Pecksniff's England on it, and she knows that I am a very big Martin Chuzzlewit fan, and that Seth Pecksniff is one of my favorite but also abhorred Dickens villains. So I just think it's hilarious that she sent that to me, and I had to share it with you. And also, tea update, both the Dickens and Dostoevsky tea were fantastic, and I'm having a hard time deciding which one I like best, because they're very, very different and they're really, really good. So as to what I have been reading, I am still working on The Hobbit. I don't have that in here with me, and I haven't made as much progress on that as I probably should, but that's okay because I have finished / DNF'd some books, so I actually have lots of time to work on it next week. The book that I DNF'd is The Razor's Edge by Somerset Maugham. I read the first chapter of this, which is 40 pages out of, I don't know, 230, 240 pages, something like that. And it was horrifically boring. It reminds me of The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton, and the fact that it's very preoccupied with society life, but they're in Chicago rather than New York. And Edith Wharton can write so well, and her prose is so lovely and beautiful that even if it's something maybe I'm not as interested in reading about, or have people that I just think are abhorrent or annoying, I'm still gonna read her book because I just think her prose is just beautiful. W. Somerset Maugham's was not. It just felt like this dry listing of people, and I don't even know. He's following some people who are, I don't know, have relationships or whatever, and one boy in particular who's just very unmotivated, I guess is the right word, to actually do anything with his life, and the society girl's in love with him, but there's this temptation of an offer from another boy who actually has more standing and is doing things with his life. And so I have a feeling that we're setting up maybe for some drama, but I just was really not into it. And this was on my Read project for a reason. And I was reading it with Penny, and Penny DNF'd it long before I did. I don't even know if I don't think she finished the first chapter. She probably just read the first little section, because each chapter is really long. There's only 7 chapters in this whole book, and each chapter is split up into sections. I don't even know how many sections there were in the first chapter. I don't know, 10 maybe, something like that. And so I don't know how far she got, but she said that she's keeping it on her TBR and wants to try to read it at some point. I probably will not come back to it, but I would give Somerset Mom another chance with another book. I just really was not into this one. Next up, coming fresh, I just finished Jo's Boys. And the only reason I got through this book as quickly as I did is because I was listening to the audiobook and I had a lot of cleaning and things I was working on this week. And that's really the only time I can listen to audiobooks is when I'm doing mindless cleaning, because otherwise my mind drifts. So that's the only time, like folding laundry or sweeping or mopping, I'm just taking it all in. And so that's like the only time. And so I did a lot of cleaning last week, both at my house and at the church. And so I did finish this one. I liked it, but I didn't even come close to loving it. Some of it I just kind of didn't care as much about. And some of it I just felt like we're divided between way too many people in this book. And the same thing was kind of true with Little Men, because we've got all the same characters here, but instead of them being children at the school, now it has turned into a university that's open to boys and girls, and we're following them as they're like teenagers and young adults. And so there's drama, there's life lessons learned, there's romances developing, marriages that are happening, all of that kind of stuff. And there's so many of them that I just really was like, okay. And it's been a year since I've read Little Men, so I didn't remember all of them at first. It took some time. And some of them I really wasn't attached to in the first book at all. Like if this had followed like Demi and Daisy and Dan and Nat and all of like that kind of core, Tommy and Nan, that core of people, I think I would have cared a lot more. But we had like people that were like a little bit more on the fringes and stuff that we're also following, and they're not all at the school. It's telling you what's happening when they're over here, and this person's over like is a sailor and they're on a boat and this is happening, and this person's out in the Wild West and this is happening, and this person wants to be a journalist, so here's the journalistic endeavors. And we do come back multiple times to Plumfield as to like what's going on there, and coming back to Jo and who is still there, her own boys included, Rob and Teddy. And so there are times when we come back, but we spend a lot of the book kind of hopping from person to person, and it just didn't work very well for me. I found myself invested in some of the stories, but not all of them, or even most of them. And so some of it's very wholesome, but like Little Men, the moralizing felt a little bit forced. Like there's a lot of times where Jo's like, I gotta sit down with my boys and preach them a sermon, and she literally says, I have a sermon to preach to you, and then gives this moral of like whatever they're going through. And because she's raised them with so much love and care, they listen to her and they appreciate her doing that. But a lot of young people at those ages would not appreciate it as much, regardless of how much someone is invested in their life. So I don't know, the moralizing was pretty strong in Little Men too, but I actually enjoyed Little Men more because there was more hilarity and hijinks. And also I loved seeing the love that Jo and her husband poured into these boys, and they still are in this book, but it's not as concentrated on that. And so it just kind of, it was wholesome and sweet and enjoyable at times, but it was just kind of like middle of the road book for me. And I gave Little Men, I think, 3.5 stars. I gave this one 3. So it was fine. I can't see myself really caring enough to reread any of the books in this series except Little Women. And I think that's because we're following the 4 sisters and their lives are all very intertwined, even more in a way than the kids that went to Jo and her husband's school are. So I don't know. It was just a little lackluster for me, but not bad. It was just kind of fine. Lastly, I flew through this, but it's manga, so that makes sense. I asked my library to get this manga when someone who is a subscriber recommended it to me. And if it was you, let me know, because I can't remember who it was. But thank you, whoever recommended this to me. Kuma Bear. This is a manga like super lighthearted, because the person asked like what I was looking for, and I'm like, something that's just like kind of a fun palette cleanser is like funny and wholesome, kind of like Spy Family, but maybe has some heart in there, but it doesn't take itself too seriously, basically isn't super intense, doesn't have a whole lot of graphic anything in it. And this was the #1 manga that she recommended to me. She recommended several to me, but this is the one that she said she thought I would enjoy the most. And so I asked my library to order it, and I didn't even realize they had. I walked in to return some books and I'm like, oh my gosh, they had volumes 1 and 2. And I was so excited. So Kuma Bear is about this girl, this teenage girl, and she's obsessed with video games to the point where she's decided she's not even going to go to school anymore. She just doesn't care. And she is part of this virtual reality MMO, which I think is like multiplayer online. I don't know what the other M stands for, but it's like a multi-online player game. And she loves this game and she goes to log into it and they're like, oh, there's been some patches and some updates. And she's like, okay, great. And then she gets into the game and she has been given this bear suit that you see on the front. And the bear suit gives her all these buffs and abilities and all these things. So she doesn't want to take it off. But also, like, no one's taking her seriously because she's wearing this bear costume. And the game that she's playing is totally different than the game that she played before. And she's like, this is weird. There's some mistake. It doesn't even really feel like a game. Like, something weird is going on here. So I don't really know, like, if she somehow has been transported into, like, an actual another world, or if this is a video game still. The book has not made that clear yet. But I thought that this was so fun and I really enjoyed it. It's so lighthearted and relaxing and really funny and sweet. And because I have gotten more into video games in the past year and a half, there's a lot of lingo in this game about like buffs and mana and like storage and just like different things that are a part of games, whether they be like RPGs or like cozy games or life sims or those kind of games that play a part in all of those games. And so I'm like, I get all the lingo and I get all the jokes that they're trying to make. So I think that if I had read this book like a year ago, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much as I did now, but I thought it was so fun and I'm so excited to read volume 2 because volume 1 kind of ends on a cliffhanger. But it's super wholesome, really, really fun, and if you're looking for something like that in a manga, you'd probably really like this. Well, that's it for this week. I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. What have you been reading? But I'm curious to hear if you've been reading kind of like seasonally, holiday type books, if you've been reading other books. I always love hearing what you're reading, and if you read any of the books that I have been reading this week, I would love to hear your thoughts on them. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me, and I will see you again next time.